Yes, chair meeting is now being recorded.
Okay, all right. If you would all please turn off any of your electronic devices. And that as well. Right. And so good afternoon. I'd like to call our meeting to order for March the 3rd, 2022 of the Historic Resources Commission. I guess we'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Alberta to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's all please stand.
Please place your hand over your heart, and let's keep Ukraine in mind as the historic country and their fight for freedom. Ready? Begin. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, Alberta, absolutely. We all need to keep in our hearts and prayers the people of Ukraine who are suffering terribly at the hands of Mr. Putin and his evil empire. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carpenter. Here. Commissioner Christie.
Here.
Commissioner Hardy.
Here.
Commissioner Shipp.
Here.
Commissioner Pena Sarmiento.
Here.
Vice Chair Marashi.
Here.
Chair Rush.
Present.
We have
Okay.
quorum with Commissioner Frazier absent.
All right.
Mr.
And-
Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question with regards to Commissioner Frazier, right? Is he still on the commission? I mean, he has not been in attendance and so forth. And is he representing redevelopment? Or which one is he representing?
As far as I know, he
committee.
hasn't been a part of either commission that he's a part of for the last 6 months. And I'm discussing with Fabiola and Min and Ali about his status at the moment.
Okay, so this is really an unexcused absence, right? And has the other commission been notified of this?
Yes, I did speak with her today and she's aware of his lack of presence as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we need to have someone who's going to show up from redevelopment at these meetings. So, okay, before we begin, I'd like to remind my fellow commissioners to turn your microphones on when speaking and off when not speaking. And when speaking, please place a microphone about 4 inches away from you. Thank you. Members of the public may attend Historic Resource Commission meetings in person or virtually via Zoom. I now invite the Commission Secretary to describe the way the public can access and participate in this meeting.
This meeting is being live streamed via our portal, www.santaana.primegov.com/public/portal, and to YouTube, www.youtube.com/City of Santa Ana videos. If you would like to provide a public comment, you may do so in the following ways. Join the meeting via Zoom, entering meeting ID 817-2689-8498. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, select the hand icon to let us know you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the name you entered. If you'd like to join us by calling in, dial 669-900-9128. Enter meeting ID 81726898-498. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, press *9 to let us know you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the last 3 digits of your phone number. After you are called upon, you may press *6 to unmute yourself. For those who are attending this meeting in person and would like to provide a public comment, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. All speakers will have 3 minutes to speak. I will alert you when your time is up.
Okay, moving on to public comments on non-agendized items. Madam Secretary, does anyone wish to speak?
If you are attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. If you are participating via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself. If you are calling in and would like to comment on this item, please dial *9 and press *6 to unmute yourself. I will wait a few seconds. Speaker, we have no comments.
Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar. Do we have a motion to approve all of the consent items?
Motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion made by
McLaughlin.
Mr. McGlaw. I can't see that far. Who's who down there? All this
Hey, I
reflection in
didn't
the
ask for a
glass.
seat down here either, but you know,
Huh? You can't see me either?
Yeah, I
see.
can't see you either.
Well,
So
Mark, you're more handsome than ever. That's
There you
why
go.
I didn't recognize you. You must be wearing your hair differently. So we have a motion by Commissioner McLaughlin and a second by Alberta Christie. Any of those opposed? So passes unanimously. Is there a motion to approve item A? These are minutes from March 3, 2022.
Mr. Chair, that
Yes.
was the consent calendar that we just approved.
What's that?
That was the consent calendar that we just approved.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. Well, it was unanimous, so there's no point in doing a roll call, right? So,
I do need
Okay.
to do roll call for the
Huh?
record. I do need to do a roll call for the record.
oh, you do? All right.
I'll go ahead and do that. Thank you. Commissioner Carpenter, Commissioner Christie,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy,
Present.
Commissioner Ship,
Yes.
Commissioner Pena Sarmiento,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier, Commissioner McLaughlin,
aye.
Vice Chair Marashi.
Yes.
Chair Rush.
Aye.
Motion approved with majority vote with Commissioner Frazier absent.
Okay, moving on to the business calendar. Formal action by the Historic Resources Commission shall become effective after the 10-day appeal period unless the City Council holds a public hearing on the matter. Then the formal action will become effective on the day following the hearing and decision by the City Council. An appeal from the decision or requirement of the commission must be filed with the clerk of the council and a copy sent to the planning department within 10 days of the date of the commission's action. The appeal may be made by any interested party, individual, or group. Public hearing protocols. I'll now review the process for the public hearing so that everyone knows what to expect. Staff will provide a presentation and answer questions from the commission. Public hearing will be opened. The applicant will be given the opportunity to speak, limited to 15 minutes. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to comment, limited to 3 minutes. The applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to comments made by the public, limited to 5 minutes. The public hearing will then be closed. Discussion will return to the commission with formal action taken to approve, deny, or continue review of the application. Please consider the following suggestions when organizing your comments. State your name and address, strictly voluntary. State whether you support, oppose, or are neutral to the proposal. Your statement should include all pertinent facts within your knowledge. This is the time and place to consider item number 1, historic exterior modification application 2022-03. Pedro Gomez is the case planner for the property located at 400 East 4th Street. Please note the decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 calendar days. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item?
Commissioner
Alberta?
Marashi and I, on Sunday, went through the whole package together and discussed each and every, this particular project, and that we did come together.
Anything you want to add?
No, that's correct.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Okay, Pedro Gomez will now provide a brief presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to make sure that the commission had an opportunity to view the screen. Good afternoon, Chair and fellow commissioners. As the Chair mentioned, this first item on tonight's agenda is a request for the approval of exterior modifications for the existing historic structure located at 400 East 4th Street. The property is located on the southeast corner of 4th and French Streets in downtown. The property contains an existing two-story brick commercial building, approximately 29,550 square feet in size on a 0.34 acre lot. The property is known as the Hotel Findlay, and it's individually listed as number 30 on the Santa Ana Historic Register. It was listed on the register as contributive in 2001. The building was constructed in 1922 by Colonel S.H. Findlay as a two-story business block for a cost of between $44,000 and $50,000. It replaced an older commercial building previously on the site. On the next couple of slides, you will see the current photos of the existing structure. This first view here is of the north elevation or north facade along 4th Street. And the second photo is of the east elevation, or excuse me, it's view east of the west elevation on French Street. As you can see, the building is rectangular in plan and it has a flat roof with brick parapet. It features the two primary facades that face 4th and French Street, separated into storefront bays and divided by piers that are clad with the cement plaster currently. The storefront windows are contemporary aluminum display windows. The original transom windows are seen along 4th Street, which can't be seen on this photo because they're boarded up, but they're not seen along French Street as they're covered up. The original single door entry along 4th Street has a ceramic tile threshold with a Findlay building inscription in contrasting tile. The two southernmost bays on the French Street elevation have been enclosed, as can be seen on this photo, one for two pedestrian doors and one for a metal roll-up overhead door. The second floor is finished with a glazed white brick with a decorative green brick pattern between the bays of the paired double hung metal sash windows. Some of the window bays on the French Street facade are partially enclosed with aluminum siding windows, but maintain header bricks below. Above the window bays, just below the parapet, is a band of cement plaster that marks the location of the original pressed cornice. So you can see that here. We're also providing some historic site photos that were provided by the applicant. These photos are from approximately 1922. Both images are from 4th Street, looking east towards the building on the southeast corner. In 2001, the building was found eligible for the National Register of Historic Places under Criterion C for architecture and as a contributor to a local district. So that's our National Historic District for downtown. The inventory form concluded the building also contributes, the building contributes to the overall character and the history of downtown Santa Ana and is a good example of a period architecture. Some of the character defining features of the building include the simple massing, the symmetrical facades, the flat roof with the brick parapet, the glazed brick wall cladding with the decorative brick detailing as shown on the elevations previously. The single and paired window openings with wood framed and wood mullions at the second floor, the storefront window bays at the street level, and the ceramic hex and mosaic tile threshold at the original building entry, which reads Findlay Building. The proposed project involved a mixed-use renovation of the building, including repair and rehab of the existing exterior facade. The project will add 7 new retail tenant spaces, including a cafe, a flexible meeting space on the ground floor, while the second floor will include offices and a recording studio. There's also going to be a new accessible roof deck and garden. I do want to point out that there's been one change in the scope of work since the report was written. The scope of work originally included a shade structure on the roof. However, this has been removed from the scope. So it's going to include a roof garden, but no shade structure above that. There are, however, penthouse structures for the stairs and elevator, which will be located on the roof and would be finished with cement plaster and a flat roof design. Each penthouse would be approximately 10 feet, 11 inches in height above the existing parapet. The west stair and elevator will be located at the southwest portion of the roof, and the west stair will be set back approximately 22 feet, and the elevator will be set back 40 feet from the west parapet. There is also mechanical equipment proposed on the southwest corner of the roof. It will be screened by a 5-foot tall metal screen set back approximately 2 feet from the west parapet. And then the north stair will be at the central eastern portion of the roof, set back approximately 30 feet from the north parapet. In addition, guardrails will be set back 7 feet from the north and west parapets to minimize the visibility of the equipment from the street. This next slide summarizes the exterior modifications along both primary facades. Again, those are along 4th Street and French Street. So the existing non-original storefront windows will be removed and replaced with new aluminum storefront windows. The prismatic glass panels will be restored in the transom windows. The existing non-original cement plaster will be removed from the piers and replaced with new compatible brick veneer with a synthetic stone base. At the second floor, the existing original wood frame pair windows will be retained and restored. The existing double hung windows units will be retained. The infilled windows along French Street will be restored to match the existing paired double hung windows. The existing glazed brick cladding will be, with the decorative green tiles, will be retained and restored. There's going to be a new compatible cornice, which will replace that cement plaster as seen in some of the photos. And that's going to be in the same location as the original cornice. And there's going to be new fabric awnings, which will be installed above the storefront windows. And then lastly, there's going to be new compatible signage that will be added to the building that will be able to be seen on one of the renderings shown later in the presentation. The next couple of slides do show the project drawings, including the proposed site plan, proposed floor plans, and the elevation. The first drawing shown here is the site plan. You can see just existing conditions on here. On this site plan, you'll see the proposed roof garden. This next slide here shows the proposed floor plan. So you can see to my left, to your left of the screen here, is the first floor. It shows the new retail and service units proposed on the ground floor with the common entry off 4th Street. There's an assembly area towards the back. And then the second floor is a combination of offices and the recording studio. This is showing the roof plan. This doesn't show, I believe, the shaded structure, but it shows the proposed roof garden area. The rooftop would include the wood decking at the south and east portions of the roof, while the green roofs would be installed and set back almost 7 feet from the parapet and will be raised nearly a foot above the existing parapet. This next slides provide a better description of the exterior changes that are proposed. This one here is the north elevation or along East 4th Street. So you can see on the elevation that there is the removal of the existing plaster infill in order to expose the original brick, the removal of the storefront system, the preparation of the column piers for the new brickwork, and the preservation of the original brick facade and ornamentation. And this next rendering shows the elevation, the same elevation with those changes. And then this next slide shows the alterations along the west elevation along French Street. They include also the removal of the existing plaster infill in order to expose the original brick, the removal of the storefront system, the preparation of the column piers for the new brickwork, the removal of the plaster infill, exposing the transom openings, and that will be along here. The removal of the windows and plaster infill to expose the original openings shown up here on the second floor. And then the preservation of the original brick facade and ornamentation. And again, the same elevation along French Street, but as a rendering to show those changes. And then just to give you an idea of what those changes include, there is a kind of a graphic showing the transom windows, examples of what it was possibly originally, the awnings, the signage extending above the roof line, and then some additional features for the cornice. This last drawing shows the proposed rendering, again, on 4th Street looking east on the southeast corner. So staff has determined that the project complies with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehab. The analysis determined that the proposed project meets the standards because the rooftop additions, and that's the penthouse structures for the stairs and the elevator, minus the shaded structure, are contemporary in design, yet compatible with the materials, the features, size, scale, and proportion, and massing of the historic commercial building. Most importantly, due to the additive nature, the rooftop addition will allow for the option for it to be removed in a way that its essential form and integrity of the historic property and the environment would not be impaired. Again, staff would like to note that the shade structure originally proposed is not included as part of the project moving forward. Lastly, many of the building's character-defining features and the materials will be restored and retained, and the building would continue to convey its historic association with the early commercial development of 4th Street and will remain eligible for listing in the city register. That concludes, actually, I'm sorry, staff recommends that HRC adopt the resolution approving certificate of appropriateness for historic exterior modification application number 2022-03. That concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any commission's questions. I do like to point out that the applicant's here tonight and the applicant architect and possibly consultants. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions of staff?
Pedro, on the rooftop garden, probably the applicant will probably answer that. What is it going to be used for? They're going to have a garden. Are they going to use that rooftop for any entertainment or anything of that nature? And also, since this is really a historic building, I hope that the applicant will be inclined to have some kind of plaque that put inside the building that says that this is a historic building. I don't know if you can do it for all of the structures there, but we do want these landmark, these historic buildings for future generation know that this is on our historic register. So those, I hope that they would consider that. And that's my 2 questions.
Would you like me to answer those now, Commissioner or Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Christie. Yes, so the rooftop garden is proposed to be kind of a passive assembly area. So there is intentions for folks who are either attending the retail services or the assembly area, or even members of the office folks to come up to the roof and just enjoy a seat or kind of a break, but it's not intended to be any more than just kind of a passive assembly use. And in regards to the plaque, the resolution of approval does include a condition of approval that staff's recommending for the applicant to install a plaque. And the dimensions, the look, and the lettering, that's all to be worked out with staff. And if the commission has a preferred location, we can definitely take that into mind.
Are there any other questions of staff? Mr. Gomez, I have a question. The penthouse, as it's described, my assumption is that's living quarters?
No, the penthouse is kind of a description that was given to the staircases that are going to be above the roof line. So those, if you can see on the screen, it's these 2 structures that I'm highlighting here. And then, oops, excuse me, and this elevator shaft here. So all 3 of those structures will be designed kind of contemporary stucco finish, kind of with a flat roof. And it's intended to kind of not detract from the brick commercial building style. They're set back from the elevations from each parapet along 4th Street and French Street, again, to try to minimize its visibility and the impacts to the building.
The area that we're looking at that is, I'll describe it as black with white stripes, right?
Correct.
What is that?
This is the area of the roof garden and kind of like the decking that's proposed. So an alternative material instead of just walking on asphalt roofing.
I see.
Yeah.
And even though there'll be a cafe in the building, there won't be a bar up here. They won't be serving alcohol, projecting music or anything like that.
None of that is proposed at this time.
I see. All right. So no living quarters. The penthouse, for lack of a better word, it's just a structure to enclose the stairwells and the elevator shaft, which is being added immediately adjacent to the building.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. If I have another question, and that is going back to the facade on French and on 4th Street. If I understood your comments, the supports between the windows, which are currently, I think you said they were covered up, they'd been stuccoed over or something, and that stucco is going to be removed to reveal what was some sort of brick facade underneath that. Is that to be uncovered and exposed, or is it to be demolished and new brick applied?
Along 4th Street. So if you could see the site photos on here, this is that cement plaster you're talking about. Along 4th and then along French. Along 4th anyways, that's proposed to be removed. Wherever's extent, it's proposed to kind of expose original brick. But from my understanding, those columns are going to be prepared for new brickwork to kind of be compatible with what would have been existing at the time.
So there will be some sort of historically sensitive brickwork there. It won't have an avant-garde new chrome and glass look, which we just love in certain settings, but not so much on a historic building.
No, that's correct. So the brickwork where it is proposed to replace the cement plaster on those columns, those piers, will be compatible, and they will kind of be consistent with what probably would have been there. They won't obviously be original, but you can see on this rendering that it's proposed to be consistent with that.
Well, it's hard to see that kind of detail from this distance, but okay. The blade, what looks to me like a blade sign there near the corner of the building, near the northwest corner of the building. What is that going to say?
It says the sound.
The sound.
Mm-hmm.
That's the business that's going in there.
It's a religious organization that's proposed to be in the assembly area on the ground floor.
Oh, so this is a church.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Is there to be a sanctuary inside this building?
Let me flip through the floor plan here. So this first floor plan here on the left, the front of the building is going to be surrounded by retail and service uses. And then this back portion, assembly area, is going to be used for the assembly purposes.
Okay. All right. So that on the left there, are those offices that I see, those little various sized rectangles?
These are proposed to be retail service uses.
Oh.
And perhaps when we invite our applicants up, they can explain a little bit more about their mission for the use in terms of retail and services.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I have no further questions at this time.
I have a question on the garden area on the roof. Is that public access or is that resident only access?
This building will not propose any residential units. So it's all commercial.
No, sir, you're misunderstanding it. The garden area on the roof, is that for the residents of the building that are using the building only, or is that public access?
Well, the building will have, if I can clarify, do you mean maybe the folks who are occupying the office spaces on the second floor?
Well, I see you have stairways and elevators that are going to the first, correct? So public access?
It'll
then?
be public access. correct.
So anyone can go up there.
As far as I understand, yeah, and the applicant could correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you. One
Okay.
other question too, please. And why are they using like it looks like a chain link fence with some sort of granary on it for concealment of equipment? Is that correct? In the one view here I'm looking at?
It's a proposed railing. It's like a guardrail. It's not going to be chain link fence, and that's set back a certain
Yeah,
feet
if you look at the
from.
one that's got a view from the corner looking both ways. The rendering.
Oh, the rendering.
Yes, sir. Right
This one
there,
here?
see up in the upper right-hand corner?
Mhm.
Yes, sir. That's
Guardrail, not a chain link fence.
guardrail as in,
A material to screen the mechanical equipment, but it's not like a chain link fence type.
What
why
will
is
the
it-
surface be?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what is it?
Perhaps the architect could explain that a little bit more when we invite her up.
Okay, and then another question that goes along with that, why isn't it enclosed like the other mechanical area with the stucco wall?
The mechanical equipment,
Yes, sir.
oftentimes for building code purposes, it can't be enclosed. There are certain ventilation requirements.
Understood. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Tim,
Yes, I'm sorry.
excuse me, Chair.
Yeah.
Just to go back on one topic, we were talking about this being a church. This is the church that was down on the southern end of Santa Ana where the Legacy is being built. Is that
The legacy.
the Legacy apartments?
Sunflower apartments.
Legacy apartments down at the south end of the city. There was a church there. Legacy is being built and the church is moving up to the center of the city.
I believe that's the case, but the applicant can confirm, but I do believe that's the case.
Okay, and I'll wait for the applicant on the next question. So we'll go from there.
Okay, are there any other questions of staff? Okay. Madam Secretary, we received any written communication?
We have received some written communication. 2 public comments have been distributed to the commissioners and posted on the website.
Okay. All right, I will now open the public hearing. I'm sorry. Well, first, we're going to allow the applicant to speak. So, okay, would the applicant like to come up? Perhaps with your architect, maybe?
Good evening, commissioners, esteemed commissioners. My name is Jana Itzen. I am with Itzen Architects, the founder of Itzen.
Yeah, your
Hello?
microphone's not on.
Let me lean closer. How's
Closer.
There you
that?
are.
I'll start over. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jana Itzen. I am the founder of Itzen Architects. We have been a Santa Ana architecture design studio since the very inception of our company. And so it gives me great pride and joy to be designing this project for the sound and working with them to restore the historic, excuse me, the historic nature of this building. So thank you for having us here. I also, not only am I a business of Santa Ana, I'm also a resident of Santa Ana. And so I know how important it is to preserve these buildings and structures that are really important to the nature of our community and the diversity of our community, to save these structures and enhance them and really help them become alive and working parts of our community here. So I have a couple different people along with me that I can introduce and bring forward to answer various questions for you. But would you like me to address some of those initial questions that you weren't able to speak towards? Or?
Sure, I believe one of those was about the railing.
So we do have a railing proposed as a guardrail around the perimeter of the building on the roof, because obviously we want to keep it safe for those who will be utilizing the roof structure. The question that you had about the screening for the mechanical unit, we have a green screen. So it would be a living, breathing, green, growing screen that would go around the mechanical units so that it would blend in with the rest of the roof garden. So it allows us to have some permeability of air to go through so that we can have the proper transmission that is needed for ventilation for the mechanical units. There was a question about another question that you had, Chairman Rush, I believe.
Question I had,
Yes, was there?
well, I think I was asking about the brick to be applied,
Yes.
in terms of, I guess you're trying to replicate what was original and had been painted or stuccoed over, who knows how many
Correct.
decades ago.
Right. So there will, as Pedro mentioned, there will be new brick that will be applied to that lower facade portion, but it will be consistent with the historic nature of the building and the historic photos that we've referenced. So we don't have anything that's planned to be chrome or gold plated or anything like that.
Well, my ears peaked up when I heard the term synthetic brick. That doesn't sound very vintage to me.
No, what we want to do here is there's a portion of the building that a lot of these historic commercial storefronts have that is on the lower portion of the facade, and it's a change in material. So we want a solid surface material, stone-like material that would be representational of those lower storefront entries and then transition to the brick. So you can see at the lower storefront area there, it's a solid material that is similar to a stone. Thank you, Pedro. That would then transition to the brick there. So we don't want it to look synthetic, but the nature of the materials that are available right now are really robust, and a lot of them actually look better and are more durable than the actual material. So we want something that's durable, that is in keeping with the historic nature of that storefront facade.
Okay, all right.
And then I believe there's a question about the occupancy of the rooftop if it was open to the public.
Right. So most of the use for the rooftop would be going up there for lunch, utilized by the businesses. And so they would be actually taking people up to the rooftop garden area because the second floor space is more of a private business. And so it would be able to be utilized by the business to have people there up on the rooftop area for lunches or meetings and whatnot.
So no public access, and the general public would not have access, is that correct?
Not on a daily basis. I think that could be something that they could be hosting something for the public there.
And how would you prevent public access, key codes, or what's the plan?
Right, they do have key access for the different stair going up through the rest of the structure. Correct.
And when are you, how long is the timeline, you believe, to get this building rehabilitated before it's in use?
The construction timeline that we've been talking with the contract teams is about 10 to 12 months. And then we would finish up the construction documents upon approval of the HEMA application, and then go through all of the necessary requirements with the city entitlements process for building permit, planning, et cetera.
And parking for this bill, I know that's not under our purview. I'm just curious what is there a plan for that, or?
You're correct. So that's usually a land use planning commission purview question. But just to answer your question, Chair, in our code, historic structures aren't required to provide parking.
Yeah,
they're exempt.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. I don't have any further questions. Anyone else have a question? Commissioner Christie?
We all received communication from Ken Tapper, who's the owner of the building. The
Owner of
the
106
historic-
West, possibly, the tap first.
Historic First National Building, right?
On the corner of
Not-
Main and 4th.
Not the owner of this building, but an adjacent building down the street. Yes.
Oh,
Did
okay.
you say 106 West 4th?
Okay, so it's not this building because, okay, that's where I was going. Okay, who is
I
this
believe the
person?
sound, the church owns the building.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct. The
first.
Sound owns this property at 400 East 4th Street.
Okay, okay, then,
And I believe Kim Tapfer possibly wrote a letter of support for our project, and she owns another building down the street.
okay. That
Is
was
that
my
maybe what it is?
question on that because of the fact that what she is saying is that she knows how important, to preserve the history and the nature of these buildings and so forth. So on this, when you were talking about the synthetic brick, that was going to be my question of, is she the owner? And no, I mean, is this part of a synthetic brick that is approved for historic buildings like this? Is that on one of the approved materials?
I can tell you, Commissioner Christie, that it's an architecture group and the owners have been working with Historic Resources Group, HRG. They're a historic consultant group from Pasadena, I believe. Among the consultants, they're a very reputable group. So they've been working closely in identifying what would be an appropriate replacement for the brickwork that can't be found there. A lot of times the preferred option is to try to preserve what's there. If it's been infilled, for example, with cement plaster, and we can maybe remove some of it and find the original, that's preferred, right? We would restore the brick, that'd be great. But in cases where it's just not there anymore, then we would replace it with something that's not creating a false sense of history, right? We don't want to put exactly what was there before, but something that's compatible. And so what It's an Architecture and the owners have been doing is consulting with HRG, and they've been providing that information. So staff is confident that the replacement materials, which we have kind of discretion on the final materials, will be consistent with what's the preferred outcome of either restoration or rehab work.
Okay, and that is, as far as preserving the architectural nature of a historic building on that. Okay.
And I can invite Laura Jansen from our historic consultant, if you'd like to, she can speak more directly to that if you have additional questions.
Good evening.
Hi.
Laura Jansen. I'm with the Historic Resources Group. Laura Jansen with Historic Resources Group. I'm an architectural historian. And Pedro explained quite well.
Yeah.
We've been working with the architect to make sure that the materials are compatible with the historic nature of the building.
It looks like a tremendously, restored building, and, all over the United States, people are now going back and redoing some of those buildings that have been left vacant and for years. And now the revitalization as far as the business communities around these old vacant buildings throughout the United States, in keeping that original architectural design makes it something as a place to be or a place to go to shop. And this one just really it seems to have hit it on the nail. It's just the little things that we have to be sure of, that it does comply, as far as the design. But the way that this building is going to be restored, I can see a lot of success as far as attracting a lot of people to visit in the area, because people are looking for unique buildings and businesses to come in and spend their money nowadays.
Commissioner McLaughlin, I believe you have a question.
Well, my question goes back to what kind of retail customer are you looking to have in this facility? Is it a professional customer, or is it a restaurant?
Thank you for your question. So the interesting thing about the Sound and their particular business model is that they are business incubators. And so they help entrepreneurs grow their businesses.
Right.
And that's how it's a really unique space for them to be able to have those individual retail suites around the perimeter of the facade, to be able to help these individuals start to grow their own business, to know what it means to occupy a space, have a lease for a space, and be able to actually put all of these entrepreneurial skills into practice. So there are several different businesses that they've helped develop, and they have a business program that they're working with them hand in hand to mentor them. That would be part of that process. Do you mind speaking?
But that's great. I really appreciate that because, you know, one thing, it could turn into something where you've got beautiful windows on the first floor, and next thing you know, people have got signage hanging out the windows. And I mean, there are a couple of other incubators down in that same area.
Right. And one of the interesting things that the city actually already has in place are signage requirements for all these storefront windows. And so part of their moving into these retail spaces is that they would be encouraged and required to comply with all the signage requirements that the city and planning department already have in place.
Or you'll get a visit from Alvaro.
Okay, any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, Commissioner Hardy.
Yes, I have a question about the windows that are on the sidewalk there, the windows that I guess are going to house the little new retail spaces. Because it seems like you've eliminated the showcase that maybe a 20s building would have, the little showcases and the recessed entries. So you just have the plate glass. So are you going to be addressing the street with the displays or addressing the interior mall-like situation? I mean, I hope the retail spaces aren't going to be turning their back on the street.
No, correct.
Concern.
Yes, they would need to address both the street front and then the interior space in the building as well. And we've actually been working with Laura closely to determine, you know, the history that the building has gone through in terms of the uses, how those storefronts have been addressed over the years, and the nature of having a commercial retail space on that front. So that's our expectation as well, that they would directly engage with the street facade on French Street and 4th Street through those windows there.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners?
Yes. A quick question. How they're going to conduct services at this location, I assume. How is that going to play with the retail spaces? And is it going to be Sundays, or is it the retail open on Sunday, services during the week? So how does that all work together?
We see those being not mutually exclusive, but that they would be complementary to one another, and that it would create an opportunity for thriving businesses to interact and engage with one another. So the services would be on Sunday, and depending on the tenants that would be occupying the retail spaces and that would obtain the lease for each of those spaces, they might have different hours depending on the use of that retail business.
Kind of curious. I'm just thinking out loud here, so bear with me. I can see where these people in the upper stories probably would not be there on a Sunday if there was a service going on below them because of the noise level, I would assume. And conversely, would that affect the service if there's people in the building on Sunday above them? Also, how does that service, as you like to put it, mesh with this retail space if you've got people out there making, you know, being people? How does that all work together? And I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm just trying to understand how this is all going to work out.
Commissioner Carpenter, if I may, that's an
Aren't we
excellent
getting
question.
outside of our purview?
Correct. Yeah, you are. That's more of a land use question, which unfortunately we don't have a purview here at the Historic Commission.
That's fine.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions from the Commissioner McLaughlin?
Is the parking lot attached to this property, or is that just a public parking?
Do you mean here?
The parking lot, I believe, is for the apartment units.
I believe so too. There's a public one along French Street behind,
Right.
the 4th and French Street. I don't recall if that one is public. It might just be for the apartment, the condominiums.
Okay. That's just curious.
Point of clarification, those are not apartments. That's at Spectrum Condominium Complex, which were apartments at one time, but were converted into condos. But anyway, that's not part of your project. Are there any other questions? I feel like a broken record. Okay, all right. Okay, you folks can sit down. Are there any members from the public that would like to speak on this? Madam Clerk, did you first before Phil comes up? Phil, just bear with us another moment. She's going to explain to the folks on Zoom how they can proceed.
If you are attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request to speak form over there on the table and turn it into the secretary. If you are participating via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself. If you are calling in and would like to comment on this item, please dial *9 and press *6 to unmute yourself. I will wait a few seconds. Chair, we do not have any speakers.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. And first up is Phil Chin. Phil?
Why am I standing here? Yeah.
Speak into the microphone, Phil.
It's on?
Well, it's on, but you got to talk right into it.
Okay. I'm standing here for two reasons. I would like the commission to take a better look at the issue of the awnings on this particular building. And then that's one of them. And I don't think they're comparable to the historical value. And I'll get to that. The second request to the commission is to look at the signage issue. The signs on this thing also don't fit the historical. And then now I'll give you the boring background. The Centaur building, it was had problems with their signage, with their awnings. And we held that up because we have a facade. Orange County has a facade easement on the building, but because they weren't historical, we wanted the ones that look. You see it at the Centauri building. They're retractable and they look larger and they're more historical than. And it maybe just be a material thing that needs to be signed off.
Are you saying that the awnings that are represented on the are too shallow?
Yeah, but they're not retractable and they're
fixed.
They're fixed. And what we asked Mike Hare to do was to have retractable, and so and they came out a little further and they look more historic. If you see those awnings on this, it's required on the Centaur building. The signage issue has always been a problem in Santa Ana. We have backlit lighting or signage like what we have. It looks like we have here is not historical. We have it on the West End Theater. We have it on the Centaur building. We have it on the Yost building. We have it on other buildings on Broadway. They're backlit.
Are you saying the signage on those buildings is correct or incorrect?
Correct. They weren't. You didn't have neon. You didn't have backlit signs in the 1920s when these buildings were built, and they're not compatible to that historical look. And
well, wouldn't I? Men or Pedro, tell me. Seems to me that don't we have a historic sign ordinance that was I think largely crafted by Joe Musel many years ago. Did you guys know anything about that, Phil? Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that. Joe was given $10,000 in 2006 or so to do one, but that was never approved by this commission or approved by the city council. If you're talking about the one that he did for the city.
The draft of the historic sign ordinance.
That was never adopted. Yeah.
Oh, The sign that's being proposed, which I asked about at one point, and it appears to me to be a blade sign is what I would call it. And I'm not an expert on 1920 signage, but I'm assuming that sign would need to be lit with some sort of spotlights that would come out 3 or 4 feet from the the facade and be shining on that blade sign. Is that what's being proposed, or?
Sure.
Thank you for the question, Phil. My understanding is that we go through a separate signage approval process for the specific sign with Pedro. And so I would assume that we could take some of these things into consideration as we work through the approval process for the signage.
That's correct, Chair. To address the public's concern about the sign, as part of the standards and as part of the guidelines for rehab, I think I might have mentioned earlier, the idea is not to create a false sense of history, right? That's direct from the guidelines. We're not creating a false sense of history. In other words, we're not going to recreate the sign that might have been there at one time. The idea is to kind of respect the scale of the building and respect what was there at one time and create something that's compatible, but not create exactly what was there. In addition, there's new technology and new requirements for building codes that might require efficiency requirements for lighting. Sometimes neon is appropriate, sometimes neon's not. And also in regards to lighting, staff does work with applicants for signage to identify a lighting that's not going to compromise the historic integrity of the building. So front lit channel letters are something that we don't normally allow. They're too abrasive. So we usually allow what's called halo lit or backlit that creates a softer light, or uplighting, external lights that kind of shine to the sign. Those are a lot more appropriate for a historic sign, and you'll see them much more common in places like downtown Orange, where they have neon signs or signs that are uplit lighting, or even halo lit with a softer light. So we would work with the applicant to ensure that the lighting and the sign does not compromise the integrity of the building.
Well, with regard to the, okay, so the signage issue will become a separate issue, and perhaps we do need to look at the historic sign ordinance, and that's something this commission ought to look at. With regard to Phil, your comments about the awnings, and I do remember that controversy, and you are correct, and that's a good point. I do think that, I mean, awnings make a huge statement on a building, and how can we address that?
Thank you, Chair. If the commission wishes, they could recommend a condition of approval to include a specific type of awning or some sort of, I'm not sure, the public mentioned some sort of retractable awning that's much more appropriate. We could do that. Staff could also give, the commission could also give staff the discretion to work on that final awning design. And if the commission has a specific example like the Centaur building, we can certainly look at that as well.
Well, I think that is far more appropriate given the vintage of the building. I would like to make that a condition of our approval today.
Thank you. And for you to consider as well, we do agree with Commissioner Hardy on the question of the windows and the nature of how retail would address the street. Since we do have the ability of adding condition, I would recommend that the commission consider a condition that would ensure that those windows are not the back of some display, but more appropriately addressed to the street frontage. So.
What do we have to do in order to add that language as a condition of the approval?
Make part of your recommendation, and we will word it.
Okay. Anyone have any objection to that? Any of the commissioners?
Well, we haven't made a motion.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Is there anyone else to speak now at the public hearing? We haven't heard from the actual applicant per se. Did you want to speak? No reason to elongate our session, make it more painful than it is. So, okay, well, seeing no one else, we will at this time close the public hearing. And all right, does the commission have any final questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve this matter? I guess I would say as amended.
Chair, I would like to move that the commission adopt a resolution approving a certificate of appropriateness for historic exterior modification, application number 2022-03, with the condition of having appropriate signage and awnings.
And addressing the window
And
issue.
addressing the windows issues.
I
All right.
second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Secretary, please call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Christie,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
Commissioner Ship,
Yes.
Commissioner Peña Sarmiento,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier, Commissioner McLaughlin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Marashi,
Yes.
Chair Rush.
Aye.
Motion is approved with majority vote with Commissioner Frazier absent.
All right, congratulations. Okay, this is the time and place to consider item 2 on our agenda, Historic Resources Commission application 2022-02. Pedro Gomez is the case planner for the property located at 1411 North Broadway. Please note the decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 calendar days. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Commissioner Christie?
On Sunday, Commissioner Vice Chair Marashi and I met and we thoroughly went over this proposed project.
You mean you met with the applicant?
Well,
Or-
no, we.
You just
met-
went and inspected the
Yeah,
property?
we met together to discuss the whole project.
Okay. Anyone else like to?
I would also like to add to that Commissioner Christie and I also attended the public hearing and then also had a subsequent conversation with Executive Planning Director Mintai.
Chair, if I could clarify, sunshine ordinance, possibly you meant Commissioner?
Yes,
Okay,
right.
It was
Yes,
not. a
that's
public
right.
Okay. Okay, all right. Pedro, staff will now provide a brief presentation.
Thank you again, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners. This next item is for approval of exterior modifications to an existing historic structure located at 1411 North Broadway. The property is located along North Broadway, south of 15th Street and between Broadway and Sycamore. The property consists of an L-shaped parcel developed with a 1 to 2 story institutional building ranging from 9,200 square feet for the 1 story portion and then approximately 5,800 square feet for the 2 story portion on an approximately 0.60 acre lot. The property is known as the Santa Ana Tusson Ywca building, and it's individually listed as number 63 on the Santa Ana Register. It was placed on the register in 2001 and categorized as landmark. The building was constructed in 1950 and dedicated in February of 1951. The property is a late and modest example of the Spanish colonial revival style applied to institutional buildings in Santa Ana. It was built for approximately $114,000, designed by architect Harold, I want to say Jimeno. I don't want to, well, doesn't matter. It's probably not alive. And constructed by notable local builder Allison Honer. The building was Santa Ana YWCA's first purpose-built headquarters and included a gymnasium, a kitchen, nursery, lobby, meeting rooms, and offices. The next couple of photos provide the site photos of the building as it exists now. This first slide shows a southeast view of the 1-story wing north facade and the east view of the west and south facades. This next slide shows the south view of the north facade of the 1-story wing and the west facade of the 2-story wing. It also shows the northwest view of the east and south facades from the North Sycamore. We've also included a couple of older perspectives of the site showing the east to west wing and the north to south wing here. The building was eligible for listing as a local landmark under Santa Ana Criterion 1 for embodying the distinguishing characteristics of the Spanish colonial revival, and under Santa Ana Criterion 4 for its association with the Santa Ana Tusson YWCA as an important social and cultural institution in the community. As mentioned previously, the property is a late and modest example of the Spanish colonial revival style. Moreover, the building is associated with post-war institutional development patterns in Santa Ana. Specifically, the building is associated with the Santa Ana Tusson YWCA as mentioned. Although associated with Santa Ana's post-war institutional development patterns, the building has undergone major changes since the construction, most notably a large upper story addition on top of the building's north to south wing in the mid-1980s. And the infill of some of the windows and doors. I'll provide a chronology of the development and the use in the later slides. Character defining features of the building include the prominent street frontage along North Broadway, the rectangular massing, the low-pitched asymmetrical gable roof at the east-west wing, the clay tile roofing at the east-west wing, the board-formed painted concrete walls at the east-west wing, the entry porch at the north facade of the east-west wing, the multi-light wood French doors at the north facade of the east-west wing, the punched window openings holding the multi-light steel windows at the east-west wing, the exterior brick chimney centered on the west facade along Broadway, also on the east-west wing, the open lounge community room at the west end of the east-west wing, the double loaded corridor flanked by smaller rooms, again on the east-west wing, and the double loaded corridor flanked by the smaller rooms. I think I might have mentioned that as part of the interior spaces. Here we have a summary of the development and use chronology for the site. The Santa Ana Tusson YWCA was established in 1924, and it officially became a chapter of the National YWCA in 1925. By the early 1940s, the Santa Ana Tusson YWCA had an active membership of several hundred. After operating out of 5 different rented facilities for over 26 years, the local chapter saw the need for a new expanded facility to accommodate its influx of members, and the Building Fund campaign commenced in 1949. Throughout the 1950s, the Santa Ana YWCA continued to offer summer programs and adult classes and hosted various community events in its new building. In 1963, the chapter officially changed the name to Santa Ana South Orange County YWCA to address the growing membership outside of the city. And the building continued to provide the same programming as it had since its establishment. The Santa Ana YWCA's mission narrowed in the mid-1980s when the chapter began focusing more specifically on serving unhoused women. In order to support the women experiencing homelessness in Santa Ana, a hotel addition was planned in 1985. The short-term housing facility comprised a tall second-floor addition at the rear of the building, and this is the north-south wing, and was intended to address the hundreds of homeless women camping outside of the YWCA at the time. The construction of the 20 double occupancy rooms over the original gymnasium was completed in 1986, and the hotel opened in 1987. In 1999, the local YWCA recognized as a new nonprofit, Wise Place, and disaffiliated from the national YWCA. Wise Place, which I understand stands for Women Inspired, Supported, and Empowered, is a transitional living center serving the needs of unaccompanied homeless women in Orange County. The new organization severed the ties with the WYCA in order to focus on their own mission statement. When it opened, Wise Place offered meals and a shelter for 30 women at the time and provided assistance and guidance, enabling women to transition to independent living. In 2019, Wise Place announced a partnership with Jamboree Housing Corporation with plans to modernize this building and construct a permanent supportive housing at the facility, which is what the proposed project is. So the project description, Wise Place is proposing an adaptive reuse project to rehabilitate and convert the existing one-story building into offices, a training center, community room, and 3 residential studio units. In addition, the project consists of a new 4-story addition with ground floor parking and residential units on floors 2 through 4, laundry rooms and communal space at the upper levels as well. A total of 48 permanent supportive housing units and 20 parking stalls are proposed. As proposed, the new construction will be designed as a simplified contemporary variation of the Spanish colonial revival style with elements such as low pitch clay tile roof, the rectangular massing, stucco wall cladding, and it will be compatible but distinct from the existing historic structure. The wing that runs north to south along the east property line is proposed to be demolished and replaced with a new 4-story addition in the approximate location and footprint of the existing north to south wing. The new structure would be significantly set back from the western property line, and that's along Broadway, approximately 145 feet. And the proposed roof line would be below the parapet height of the existing structure, with only the elevator tower above the existing parapet height now. I'll be able to show a better view of that on the west elevation in just a few minutes. The majority of the 1-story east to west wing of the historic building, stretching roughly about 126 feet from the front to west facade, will be rehabbed for the offices, the training center, and the community room, and 3 residential studio units. Construction of the new program will necessitate partial interior demolition of the wing, but the overall floor plan will remain the same. This is just kind of a description of what I just provided. And then to go over the scope of work in better detail here, I'm going over a couple of site plans and floor plans to demonstrate the work that's being demolished, the work that's being kept, and the new area of improvement. So here we have the existing site plan. In red, you see the property line, you see an L-shaped parcel. Also in an L-shaped, you see the east to west wing. This is the 1-story volume of the building that's currently existing. And you see the north to south wing, which includes the gymnasium and the hotel construction on top. This gives you a better understanding of that same situation. The east to west wing is highlighted here roughly. It's about 9,200 square feet or so. And the north to south, about 5,800 square feet. What's being kept as part of the 1-story structure, it's approximately 126 feet of the east to west wing here. About 53 feet or so of the existing 1-story structure would be removed in order to accommodate the new structure. The entirety of the north and south wing will be demolished. Here we have the proposed site plan. You can see that the portion that's going to be retained here includes 126 feet. And here we have the ground floor parking. The new construction along the back here, long portion, it's going to be approximately, I believe, 89 feet. It's kind of hard to see here, 89 feet for the construction. And the new north to south wing will be approximately 135 feet long. So 126 feet here that we're going to keep, new construction of 89 feet in this direction, east to south, and then the dimensions of the north to south would be 135 feet. Here we have the proposed floor plan for the first and second floor. Again, you'll see that the portion that's being retained as a 1-story would be converted into community rooms, offices, leasing, and then 3 units. The ground floor would be parking. This is all the new construction. And on the second floor, we have the roof shown on here because there's nothing being built on top. There's no alterations on this portion of the wing. And the second floor shows an office and the rest of units. These are all proposed to be studios. The third floor has a similar floor plan layout as the second floor where there's an office and then the rest would be studios. And then finally, the fourth floor would include community spaces, an open deck area, and then units as well. And then here we have a rendering of the proposed south elevation. As you can see, this is going to be 126 feet. And I have a section of the building which will demonstrate that in just a few minutes. And this area back here will be the new construction. And then this is a rendering of the west elevation. Again, the new structure would be significantly set back from the western property line, which is Broadway. And it's going to be approximately 145 feet from that property line. The proposed roof line would be below the parapet height of the existing structure. So all of this portion here would be below what's currently built there now. The only portion that's going to exceed the existing height of the structure there now is this here. It's an elevator tower above the existing parapet height. Here we have the building section to show again the 126 feet that's going to be maintained, and then the height of the new structure. And the next couple of slides show perspective drawings of the rendering in context with the existing east to west building that's supposed to be retained. All of this is along Broadway. And this is just one more kind of front elevation on Broadway as well. Staff has determined that the project complies with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehab. Specifically, the analysis has determined that the proposed project meets the standards because the project will not result in a demolition of the Santa Ana Tusson Ywca building. Although the project does propose a removal of the existing north to south wing of the building, that wing has already been significantly altered and does not retain any distinctive historic features or spaces. The east to west wing, which has been minimally altered and is the portion of the building most visible to the public, will be retained and rehabbed. Thus, the building will continue to retain all of its character defining features. Moreover, the project will retain the historic building street frontage along North Broadway. Even though the project proposes the construction of the 4-story addition to the building, the new construction will be significantly set back, as mentioned, and will not block any important views of the historic resource. Most importantly, due to the additive nature of the new 4-story addition, the rear of the building, if removed in the future, would retain the essential form and integrity of the historic east to west wing unimpaired. Therefore, staff recommends that the HRC adopt a resolution approving a certificate of appropriateness for historic exterior modification application 2022-02. I'm available for questions, and like the previous project, we do have the applicant here today as well as historic consultants if the commission has any questions.
Are there any questions of commissioners? Alberta?
Okay, Pedro, would you please go to slide 43, I believe. Maybe it's one more, maybe it's 42.
Is it the elevation?
No, it was the space between the two buildings that it showed in the rendering. Maybe go back. Right there. Okay. Okay, you see that? That's 43. Okay, so there's going to be, I'm seeing blue. You can point to that.
Is this what you're referring to, Commissioner?
Right, right. So there is going to be a space between the two buildings, right?
I'll probably defer that question to the architect though, but it looks represented, yes, that there's a space.
There is a space, yeah, I'll talk to that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure, am I saying that correctly? Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions from commissioners?
I have a quick question. Is Edison going to remove that power pole right in the middle of things there? I hope.
As currently proposed, no. It would result in more alteration of the historic structure, which we would advise against. So as part of their entitlement process, we're looking for ways for that to be accommodated as existing.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, I'm curious about the elevator shaft, the tallest part. Is that a design element or is that something necessary? I mean, why can't the elevator shaft end at the other roof, tallest roof height?
Yeah, I'll probably let the architect speak to that too, but my understanding is there's typically equipment that needs to be housed, for the shaft to go up, but it is a building code requirement to provide access to all of these units through ADA state requirements. But there's typically more than just the elevator shaft that needs to be housed in the elevator corridor, I guess I would call it. So it needs to certainly be a certain height to accommodate that. So that's probably what you're seeing here.
Pedro, I have a question. and I don't know which slide it was, but probably one that shows the site, the top-down view. And I'm just curious, you at one point had showed some drawings that were original to the 1950 construction, which showed some beautiful trees and landscaping and so forth. And is there going to be much in the way of landscaping around the building?
The site's pretty limited. Let's see if I could maybe.
I mean, as you look at it, and you know, I understand what they're trying to achieve, but gosh, you look at the massing as you look at it from Broadway, and they need to plant a lot of ivy. I mean, man, the massing is just striking.
If I could clarify, so when it comes to the difference in height, we're really talking about inches. So in terms of height of what's already out there, the gymnasium isn't all that smaller. I understand the massing.
I get
in terms
that.
of the north to south.
But it is still, that's what does hinder the appearance here. I wonder if there's any way to address requiring more landscaping. And obviously it needs to be vertical landscaping, maybe installing some trees that were taken out that maybe could be put back, because this, and I visited the site with Albertus, oh, I don't know, it's been a year and a half, 2 years ago. There's an area which I guess it would appear is largely going to be gobbled up by the new building, but you know, it's all parking lot now. And that clearly was, you had the, go back to the, there you go.
This is not of the 1950 though. This is with the addition in 1986. It's a two-story volume.
All right.
There.
Well, look at all that landscaping.
It's a conceptual design. I'm not sure if that's exactly what the conditions
I know
out
that,
there.
but I'm just saying that it would soften the massing that is being proposed. The site needs it, and for the ambiance of their guests, as well as just so the building has a better appearance. In my view, it's see all of that area, all that's being gobbled up by the new addition, and I'm just curious, can't they add some more vertical landscaping?
Thank you, Commissioner. We do have a landscape plan as part of the overall entitlement. That's unfortunately not included as part of today's conversation, but they are proposing landscaping. I'm not sure if it addresses the concerns that you're talking about, but that's certainly something that could be either discussed with the applicant or conditioned.
Can you go back to showing some pictures of what the detail is on the new building? I know that the one that was from 1986 was, gosh, it was so badly done in terms of its, I mean, they didn't do anything to try to make it compatible with the existing building. It was horrid. So I have no qualms about that building being demolished. It's as ugly as homemade sin. But anyway, the roofing on this new building, is it going to be red tile to tie in with the existing building, or what is there some effort to, you can't tell by looking at this rendering?
If I recall, it was supposed to be something that would be compatible, and it's certainly represented as a red tile as well. It's shown as and represented as a red tile. We'll probably have to have the architect clarify that as well, but I want to say yes.
Yeah. Well, of course, the new building is so much bigger than the building it's tying into, which is the historic building. And I recognize, we're not trying to make the new building look exactly like the 1950 building, but it does need to be compatible. But at this point, that I'll wait and defer to, I'm sure the architect's going to come up here and make some comments. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Marashi?
Can you go back to page 39, please? The original part of the building, and we're talking the historic parts, the 126-foot, 10-inch piece, correct? Pedro? The 126-foot, 10-inch piece is the historic part we're talking about.
The entire historic part is this first wing here.
Yeah, okay, so
Right.
on page 39, the 53-foot, that is part of the original historic piece, correct?
Correct. Parts of that
And-
have been altered.
And part of that is going to be removed, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Apparently all of it's going to be removed.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. No other questions from the commissioners? All right, Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication?
We have received written communication. We've received 8 comments from the public that have been distributed to the commission and have been posted on the website.
All right. Okay, the public hearing is now open. I'm just going to call the applicant up now. Would the applicant like to come up now?
Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. My name is Bertil Agassi, and I'm so honored to be the Chief Executive Officer of Wise Place. And with me, I have.
Hi, my name is Evan St. Charles. I am a Senior Associate with Architectural Resources Group.
And I'm Katie Horak, a Principal at Architectural Resources Group.
It really is an honor to present to you an opportunity to not only build Orange County's first and only supportive housing for unaccompanied women, focusing on veterans and seniors, but to be able to do so while restoring the historical significance of our building is truly an honor and would be a dream realized for our organization. For almost a century, Wise Place has called Santa Ana home. And since our inception, we have proudly served over 8,400 women. And being the only nonprofit solely focused on the unmet needs of unaccompanied women. Unaccompanied women are extremely vulnerable because essentially they're alone. Unaccompanied women is just another way of saying women who lack the support of a family, such as a spouse or children. 1 in every 3 homeless adults in our community is an unaccompanied woman. And with senior women experiencing homelessness at really heartbreaking and alarming rates, because seniors living on fixed incomes simply cannot meet the rising rents. Women who experience homelessness, unaccompanied women who experience homelessness, are 5 to 10 times more likely than the general public to be assaulted. And unfortunately, year after year, statistics in our community and nationwide reveal that unaccompanied women, that at least 50% of women first experience homelessness because of experiencing and enduring domestic violence or sexual assaults. And at Wise Place last year, that percentage was 67% of the women we served. So our vision and our mission and our why is very clear. So we set out to find a development partner with a proven track record, and that is Jamboree Housing, and our architects are here as well. And thank you for your questions. We will definitely answer all of them and would love to get your feedback. We interviewed dozens of development partners, and Jamboree stood out very easily in the crowd. They are California's 2nd largest nonprofit developer in our state. They house over 18,000 low-income residents all over California in 93 properties. The name Jamboree Housing probably rings familiar because last year they developed Veterans Village, which is right here in Santa Ana, and they ended the homelessness of 75 veterans in our community. And so with a clear vision and clear mission and the right development partner with Jamboree by our side, we set out with a vision to end homelessness. in our community. What we did not know was that our building was dedicated landmark historical. And so we quickly learned that, and we're very honored, I was surprised, but we were very honored by the designation. And when you don't know something, the best thing to do is reach out to experts and learn. And so that is when, I believe it was a year ago, time flies, especially during COVID, but when I reached out to Commissioner Christie and Commissioner Rush, and they were so generous with their time to come to Wise Place. And we explored many possibilities. But after meeting both commissioners and really receiving really great feedback, is we quickly learned that we needed to scrap our original plan and not move forward with that, and created this new vision for building OC's first and only supportive housing for unaccompanied women. And after meeting both commissioners, we also quickly realized that we really needed to invest in the historical preservation, and we wanted to proudly do so. So that is when we added ARG to our team. And there's nobody better to talk about our historical kind of journey than ARG themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertil, and thank you to staff for a great presentation. And thank you so much, Chair Rush and members of the commission for your consideration this evening. As I mentioned before, my name is Katie Horak, and I'm a principal at Architectural Resources Group. And we're really grateful to be here tonight to present our findings and process with you. And since ARG might be new to many of you, we thought it might be useful to just give you a little introduction to who we are. And I'm going to do that before I pass the mic over to Evan St. Charles to provide more information about our process. ARG is an interdisciplinary architecture, planning, and conservation firm founded over 40 years ago, with the core mission that historic buildings bring value and vitality to every community. Although founded in San Francisco, we opened a Pasadena office about 20 years ago when we had a very large seismic retrofit project at Pasadena City Hall. So since then, our Southern California office has grown to 20 people, and we have staff representing all practice groups, so planning, architecture, and conservation. And we're very lucky to do work throughout all of Southern California, including many communities in Orange County, including very long relationships with cities of Anaheim, Dana Point, Laguna Beach, Tusson, and we're really pleased to have a growing number of projects here in Santa Ana. So Evan and I are both architectural historians, and together we have about 30 years of professional experience. And Evan has managed most of our Orange County work for a number of years and is highly knowledgeable on the architecture, social history, and development patterns of this region. So as you know from your work as commissioners, every historic resource brings its own unique story, and every adaptive reuse project requires a delicate dance of balancing the retention of historic character with the needs of the project. In our experiences, these types of rehabilitation projects are most successful when there's a close collaboration between the owner, the developer, the architect, and the historic preservation consultant. And that could not have been more the case than it was with this team. The resulting project has come such a long way, as I know you're going to see tonight, and we're so proud to be here with this team to present it to you. So with that, I'm going to invite Evan to speak more with more detail about the project itself, and we're both happy to answer questions that you might have after the presentation.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for having us tonight. For the remainder of our presentation, I'm going to walk through ARG's methodology and process for identifying any potential impacts the project could have on the Santa Ana Tusson Ywca, a local historic landmark. In preparing our historic assessment of the property, ARG's research and analysis of the building focused on the following components. We worked to gain an in-depth understanding of the building's significance to augment the landmark documentation that had already been done previously. We did research to understand how the building changed over time, and we identified its existing historic character, or what we call character-defining features. With this baseline understanding, we were able to identify features and spaces that needed to be preserved due to the presence of historic character, and other spaces and features that had room for intervention due to previous alterations that had occurred. This is an important first step in determining a project's impact to historical resources, as it provides the baseline information regarding the presence of historic character as nearly all buildings change over time. As with many local jurisdictions, Santa Ana uses the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. As defined by the National Park Service, rehabilitation is the act or process of making possible a compatible use for a property through repair, alterations, and additions while preserving those portions or features which convey historic, cultural, or architectural values. It is customary for cities, including Santa Ana, to use the standards for rehabilitation because they allow for some change and the continued vitality of buildings while ensuring the building's historic character is also retained. As part of our research on the history and development of the property, ARG identified a period of significance of 1950 to 1985. The period of significance begins with the year the building was constructed or completed as the Santa Ana test in Ywca. When determining what the end date of a building's period of significance is, it's customary to use an end date of a change in program or use. So in this case, the period of significance ends in the year the local organization's mission narrowed from providing a range of services to the entire region to focusing specifically on housing, resulting in changes to the building's program and appearance due to major alterations after the period of significance and specifically in 1986 and 87. As Pedro had mentioned, the subject building has been significantly altered, specifically the north-south wing, with a large addition, which is kind of an incompatible postmodern structure that was constructed atop the north-south wing in 1986. Although the north-south wing of the building has been altered, the one-story east-west wing that fronts on Broadway is largely unchanged from its original construction. This is the public face of the building, as the north-south wing is set back nearly 180 feet from Broadway and largely obscured by a neighboring building to the north. Although the north-south wing is visible on Sycamore, the rear of the building does not retain any historic character. However, the east-west wing retains nearly all of its historic character, including its one-story massing, original gable roof with clay tile roofing, painted concrete walls, steel windows, and brick chimney. Because the east-west wing retains its original character-defining features, it was important that the project preserve as much of that, the historic appearance of the east-west wing as much as possible. So the proposed development will retain the majority of the east-west wing. In keeping with the standards, all existing character-defining features of the historic building will remain. That includes restoration of the original steel windows, repainting. ARG did a paint analysis, what we call a historic paint analysis, to determine the original color of the building. And as part of the project, that east-west wing will be repainted to match the original color or original paint color scheme. The clay tile roofing will be retained and the brick chimney will be restored. In compliance with rehabilitation standards 9 and 10, the new construction will be designed, as staff had mentioned, as a contemporary variation of the Spanish colonial revival style with clay tile roofing and stucco wall cladding. In addition to its compatible contemporary design, the new construction will be painted a green color scheme, which helps the addition recede into the background and further minimizes its view from Broadway. So that kind of dark green color helps it kind of just recede into the background and really focuses on, highlighting the historic east-west wing that fronts on Broadway. Because all of the historic building's distinctive features and materials will remain under the project, and the project, as ARG has concluded, meets the Secretary of the Interior standards, it will not have an impact on the historic significance of the Santa Ana landmark. Thank you for your time. As Katie mentioned, we're all here to answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Chris Weinhold. I am an architect and principal with Architecture Design Collaborative. We are the architects for the co-partner or the developer, Jamboree Housing. on this really great project. And there were a couple questions that were asked that I could shed some light on. First, Evan already kind of touched on the tiled roof. We are proposing a concrete manufactured roof tile, S-shaped tile, S-style tile shaped roof that would mimic the shape of the clay tile roof that's on the historic portion of the building, but we chose a slightly darker tile on purpose to distinguish or not to implement and copy the exact historic roof tile that's there. We don't want to give the impression that this building is actually part of that historic nature of that. And then as far as the question regarding the elevator tower, it does have a penthouse over the elevator that extends about 4 or 5 feet above where the top of the roof would be. But what you're seeing there is also the stair tower that has to go to the roof due to the fire code. Were there any other questions?
Do you want to address the issue of landscaping?
Oh, sure. So we do have a landscape architect engaged, and what you're not seeing is a landscape plan. And an additional thing that may have gone unnoticed is that when the building was built and modified in '85, you'll notice that the current gymnasium is nearly to the property line of the site. Our new portion that we're building the north-south wing on is actually set back from the property line a good almost 10 feet. And the parking lot that you're seeing there on the west side of that north-south wing is actually going to be open space for our tenants. So there will be some softer landscape features where we will have the ability to add some landscaping trees in that area where it's now asphalt. So I don't have the landscape plan in front of us, and it's not fully vetted out or designed, and we have not gone through entitlement yet fully. So there's still our opportunity to work with the city on exactly what the landscaping is going to be, but it's going to be more than what you're seeing there, which is just asphalt.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Chris, if you could address the commissioner's question about the what looked like a gap between it, so like the connection between the buildings.
That's I also wanted to talk about that. So what you're seeing there is, yes, the historic building and the new construction will be physically separated with about a 12-inch gap, but you're not going to see through the buildings. So that elevation is a little misleading. Really, there'll be a cover plate there. And what that gap is for is that seismic separation between the old building and the new building. We need to have a little bit of room between them so that the buildings can move independently and not bang into each other. So what you'll end up seeing is, well, no one really see it because it's on the side of the building, but like an aluminum cover plate that'll be painted to match one of the paint colors that is adjacent to it.
It's all right. Commissioner Christie?
Sure.
That so the blue space, the sliver of blue that you're seeing between the two buildings, it shows up because the rendering program identifies that there's a break in the building. But in reality, when we construct it and draw the elevations, there will not be a gap that's going to be visibly present there. There's a gap between the buildings where the buildings will have an airspace in between them. But on the exterior, there will be a cover plate that's, thin metal gauge cover plate that can help the buildings move independently during a seismic activity. But it will be shielded, so you will never be able to see through it. And by the time it's painted to match the color of the wall, you won't even know it's there.
So there's no access whatsoever. No one can go through that.
No.
Okay.
In fact, I didn't even know
that just,
in fact, I didn't even know it was there until it was blown up on a TV screen that was, 12 feet wide. When you look at it on my 11 by 17, you don't see it.
Well, it caught my eye. I look for little
Yeah.
details.
Well, when you mentioned it, I kind of laughed to myself and also kicked myself.
We're sensitive to those kinds of issues in Santa Ana because it could become a site for an unhoused family, you know, so.
Right, yeah, no.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's very common actually to have these seismic gaps. It just has a cover plate on it. Was there any other questions that I may have missed?
Are there any other questions from the commissioners? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to address this item? Okay. Okay, so all right, I guess I'll close the public hearing at this time.
I do need to give an opportunity for the people on Zoom to comment.
Oh, do we have people on Zoom?
I'm not sure, but I need to say my little spiel.
Oh,
And then you
I'm
can
sorry.
close it. It's okay.
Well,
if you are attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it in to the secretary. If you are participating via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself. If you are calling in and would like to comment on this item, please dial *9 and press *6 to unmute yourself. Chair, we do not have any speakers.
okay. Well, we heard from the applicant and several consultants. So, and as there's no other comments from commissioners, all right. Well, for the second time, I will attempt to close the public hearing. And does the commission have any final questions of staff?
I do. Here's what I'm wrestling with. Wyatt's Place is honestly doing God's work, and I would give them as much space as they need. But we're here looking at it from just a historic point of view. That's all of the purview we have. And what I see is the original part of the gymnasium was added to a second story. So it's lost a lot of its historical significance. I get that. And so the historical significance is the east-west piece. And again, this is a landmark, which is the highest rating category we have. And yet we're losing 29.5% of that length of the historical piece, 29.5%. That's what I'm wrestling with. My question to you is, how much of that we lose do you see from a street view? Can you say?
I can't, but I can't imagine that it's visible from Broadway. It's fairly deep. Let me see if I can go. Yeah, you have an existing structure here. It's pretty narrow. I don't think you can see it from the street.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? Okay, all right. At this time, I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the application. Anyone like to make that motion? Okay, Commissioner Marashi? Oh, Alberta, I'm sorry, Alberta. The reflection on these things is, Jesus, I feel like I'm in a house of mirrors or something. Okay, Commissioner Christie.
I move to adopt. I'm sorry, I left my glasses at home. Could you put it on the screen there? Thank you. Now I can see it. I move to adopt a resolution approving a certificate of appropriateness for historic exterior modification application number 2022-02 with a condition of landscaping of the building on the back side of where Sycamore is and on the side of Broadway, so that it would bring the building to life.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Hardy. So it's been moved and seconded. Secretary, please call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Christie,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
Commissioner Shipp, Commissioner Sarmiento,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier, Commissioner McLaughlin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Marashi,
Yes.
Chair Rush.
Aye.
Motion is approved with majority vote with Commissioner Frazier absent.
Okay. Been a long road for you. Yes, congratulations. Okay, this concludes the public hearing and business calendar of the Historical Resource Commission. Now moving on to our work study calendar. The first item on the work study calendar is Historic Preservation Work Program discussion. Please note no action will be taken on this item this evening. Before we begin, have we received any written communication, or is there a member of the public that would like to comment on this item?
Chair, we have not received any written communication.
Okay.
If you are attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. If you are participating via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself. If you are calling in and would like to comment on this item, please dial *9 and press *6 to unmute yourself. As a reminder, each speaker has 3 minutes. Chair, we have no speakers.
All right. Okay, staff Pedro Gomez and Fabiola Zelaya Melisher will now provide a presentation on Historic Preservation Work Program.
Thank you, Chairperson Rush. And before our staff begin the work program presentation study session tonight, I just want to take a few moments to share with you that the process and the program has come a long way. And as we continue to work on the historical preservation program, we have heard comments from our commissions, at various meetings, and I want to have a process that we look at how we can discuss those ideas, prioritize them, and hopefully turn that into a productive process as a work program, as we've done in the year past since we established the process for discussing ideas, discussing potential work programs, and forwarding it to the City Council. Our staff has formulated an agenda for us tonight to go over and take stock some of the accomplishment we have had over the past couple of years, look at some key staff initiatives, but also provide an opportunity for the commission to discuss some of the ideas for either something that's upcoming or something that's working the long term in conjunction with the general plan proposed update. The goal tonight, as the chairman has indicated, is that we are going to have a discussion, but not necessarily make any action or recommendations. My hope is that through our discussion tonight, we can take the ideas back, turn that into a priority work program, and then come back to you and have you discuss how to prioritize that. So that's the goal. With that, I'd like to have Pedro Gomez go over our work program tonight and the work study session. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And thank you again, Chair and Commission. As Director Tai mentioned, the Commission may recall that a couple of years ago, staff and the Commission worked to establish communication between the Commission and the City Council through a development of a memo. At the time, the Commission had identified concerns that they had regarding cost of applications, regarding frequency of meetings, regarding some of the, authorities and powers that the Commission had to grant conditions of approval for resolutions for historic items. And so what we did in that time was we, again, developed this memo and presented to the City Council. There was a series of conversations that staff had with the Commission in July and October 2019. In April 7th of 2020, we presented the memo to the City Council. And then on July 7th, 2020, we presented implementation recommendations. And so the purpose of today's work presentation is to do exactly that. As Director Tai mentioned, not necessarily identify those items today, but possibly through a second meeting and through some sort of similar implementation measure, present these ideas to the city council for changes that the commission wants to achieve. Just as a refresher, when we developed the implementation plan with the staff report that we presented to the city council, there was a couple measures that were presented as immediate, midterm, and long-term. The immediate measures that were presented were one, formalizing the recommendations of the city council, which we did, amending the municipal code to allow the HRC the authority to impose reasonable reasonable project approval conditions, which was completed in October of 2020 through an ordinance modification to Chapter 30. We identified and flagged historically sensitive areas. Through the help of the commission, we identified neighborhoods that were identified as historically sensitive. Some of those included ones that we know of, Floral Park, West Floral Park, Henninger, but also neighborhoods that the commission identified as new, like East Side or Washington Square. That was also completed by staff. We did amend the ordinance to, or actually I think it might have been the, what was it called? Commission bylaws. So we amended the bylaws. Sorry about that. We amended the bylaws to amend the frequency of the meetings from quarterly to 6 a year. That was completed. And almost immediately after the city council action, we also reduced the application fees for listing to 500 and Mills Act to 25. The midterm measures that have not been completed yet that had been identified by the commission as well were the tree preservation ordinance. That's something that the staff has not been able to get to. Comprehensive update to existing design guidelines that has not been completed. And then looking at a historic preservation element that has been in the works through our efforts to adopt our comprehensive update to the general plan, which some of the commission may be aware, it's been at the city council for consideration for a couple times, and we're hopeful that this year it'll be adopted. Long-term measures included the establishing a local district designation programs that also hasn't been completed. This was as a result of the great efforts that Floral Park undertook to recognize their neighborhood as a National Historic District. So we've had a lot of neighborhoods ask about what the process would be like. And unfortunately, through our local ordinance, we don't have one established, right? The grassroots efforts that Floral Park established were just that, grassroots efforts. And so what we'd like to do is make sure that we have standards developed in our ordinance to let folks like Washington Square or Park Santiago say, this is what I'm going to do to have a local designated district. For key staff initiatives, we have made some changes here internally. One was we've gone through and identified vacant historic structures registration and protection process. We've had an area code officer through code enforcement. The efforts have been taken to one, hire additional officers, and then also have those officers be almost like dedicated historic preservation, if you will, for lack of a better term. But we've, with planning staff, worked closely with code enforcement to identify changes that have been made in neighborhoods like Henninger Park without permits, or structure changes that have been potentially diminish a historic structure. We've also tagged, as mentioned earlier, historic properties and historically sensitive areas in our permit system. And we have been coordinating with not just code enforcement, also our building department to make sure that we have a full understanding of what can be done with like building code requirements and processes. Some administrative enhancements. We have formally made a historic section for planning. Right now, it's a member of one, myself. We've recently lost Jill Rabe, the commission may be aware, to a different city. But the hope is that we continue to grow this historic section to more than just one individual. We have done identified kind of a process and procedure for dealing with historic properties in historically sensitive areas. And that's seen more at the administrative level. The commission may not see it at this point. More at the administrative level is identifying what a staff member should do at the counter when there's a application coming through with changes to windows on a historically sensitive neighborhood or structure. So we've developed that internally and then made sure that if it's not through our regular planning staff, that they funnel all that through our historic section, which is myself. Some additional work program items that we identified is we'd like to do one, in order to improve our program, we'd have to identify grant and funding opportunities. We also want to make sure that we are archiving or any sort of existing survey information that might have been done, windshield surveys, or even just normal surveys that have been done to help identify future areas of study in the future. For example, one area of interest now is the South Main area corridor. So that's been something that's been discussed among the commission, among the community, and even identified as part of like the general plan update. Some additional work programs. We'd like to update our Mills Act program to be in compliance with state law. There are state law requirements to go and inspect properties every 5 years. Properties that are on Mills Act agreement. To date, we haven't done that, and it's due to availability of resources and limited staff. But the idea is to kind of revamp our program to not only make those changes, but also require what's called a rehabilitation plan, a more robust one that identifies exactly what needs to be done, or I guess what the owner wants to do within the 10-year Mills Act agreement. And the idea is through the inspections for every 5 years, we'd kind of do a checklist quote of those changes have been made. If not, they'd be identified as part of the next revolving rehabilitation plan for the continuation of their Mills Act agreement. We'd also like to survey total cost and time for updating our Chapter 30, which is our historic ordinance in our city municipal code. Last amended in 2003. We're actually probably more recently to those changes that the commission made, but it was implemented in 1980. So there's been a lot of changes, a lot of kind of new requirements or new tools and I guess options that other cities have honed in on and changed the ordinance to help not only expand the program to areas that need expansion, like areas kind of south of 17th Street. But it's just, I think it's time to kind of make sure that we're addressing any sort of new changes. We'd like to also develop a roadmap, not only just to update our historic ordinance, but to identify consultants, kind of like we've seen today with ARG or HRG, that we'd like to work with and who are reputable and have a great kind of track record of not only updating ordinances, but design guidelines. So we'd really like to invest that time and energy to make sure our program is up to par to cities like Orange or Anaheim. And lastly, as part of this, we really are invested in looking at adding additional full-time historic preservation staff. As part of the commission work program, there are some existing items that the commission has identified. One big one is the historic South Main Walk, which the ad hoc committee will present on later on today. But also there's been a lot of renewed interest on the installation of historic plaques. So moving forward with any sort of HEMA applications as part of the resolution of approval, we will automatically be recommending a condition of approval to install a historic plaque, an example of which can be shown on the screen here. Those are bronze plates for residential areas. They're about 3 to 5 inches in dimensions, bronze plate with kind of raised text. Usually what we would do before is it'd be kind of an optional item for homeowners to install. Now we'll be making it as part of a recommended condition of approval, not only for our HEMAs, for our listings and Mills Acts. And then really what we'd want to do is also allow the commission to identify additional measures for staff consideration, strategies for obtaining greater participation in our preservation awards. We've had historic preservation award program the last 3 years, but there's been very limited participation. Often we have 3 or 4 applications come through and some of those aren't eligible. So we end up with 1 or 2 considerations. And so the idea is to end up with maybe 10, 15, so we can really give an opportunity to review those and award those worthy of kind of preservation awards. We'd like to kind of identify the strategy for the creation of the locally designated historic districts, which we mentioned, but I think again, because of Floral Park, it's been highlighted and something that a lot of communities want to really consider because it helps preserve their neighborhoods from changes such as infill changes that are not compatible with their existing neighborhood or alterations to buildings with vinyl windows that are just not compatible. So that's huge for us. And we'd like to identify a strategy for auditing Mills Act agreements as well. I think logistically, without the staff or without consultants, it's kind of a logistic nightmare. We have over maybe 400 agreements in the city, 700 and something properties who are designated, but over 400 agreements. That's a huge undertaking. And then, of course, we'd like to kind of follow up this session and identify next steps through the conversations that the commission has today. Whatever we take in today, we'd like to prioritize and organize as recommendations, similar to the last process through a memo. We'd like to forward those recommendations to our city council and then identify funding opportunities, either through the fact that we're a CLG, certified local government, there's grant opportunities through that, or if there's other opportunity for funding that we can kind of collect and save for a pot of money to do surveys, that's also great as well. So again, these are the main points that we talked about today. We're open to hearing the commission discuss these items. Thank you.
Fabiola, you've been curiously quiet. Do you have any comments?
Pedro is doing such a great job. Yep, and my mic doesn't work.
Commission have any questions of Pedro's presentation? How unusual, Alberta. Commissioner Christie has a question or a comment. We hardly hear from you.
Do we need to pass the plate to get somebody else to help you so no one else picks you off? You know? Just kidding. Doing a great job, Pedro. As you know, my major focus has been on the African American community and coming in with that Little Texas and start at the district from Bristol down to McFadden, down to Fairview, and I think it's 5th Street, right, Commissionership? 5th Street on the north side, or does it go Civic Center? Did it change to Civic Center?
Little Texas is Sullivan to Bristol, McFadden to First.
To First. Okay, Bristol First.
That little
McFadden
square.
and going into Fairview.
You could go to Civic Center because there was, you
Right.
could go Civic Center.
And then I was thinking of Mr. Tippins and the area, so that
Yeah.
brings
yeah.
that area in
So you could
as
add
far,
Civic Center.
because, you know, they have their own Black Business Alliance that they started to promote and protect their businesses and everything. And it is significant because a lot of good things as far as history happened, from crosses burning on properties, from the Ku Klux Klan to the establishment of the fair housing. There, a lot of the residents in that area went undercover as far as being, you know, to go to an apartment or anything else. And that's what the federal housing law came into that. And I think that's 1964. But a lot of that area, the Marines from El Toro, lived in that area. And as they transferred out or whatever, became successful in the businesses, of course, they elevated up to other areas. And we do need to have that listed as a historic area, because if not, I mean, it's fading. And you have a group that is not being recognized, and it started from the 40s. Okay, it started from the 40s, and you have not only churches, but the only Masonic building in Santa Ana, which is the Prince Hall,
Prince
right?
Hall.
Prince Hall, that's on that. And we just honored Mr. Warren Bussey, who's the oldest resident in Orange County that lives off of Pacific. Is it Pacific?
Walnut and Pacific.
Okay, on 107 years old. And the accomplishments that he's done, Norman Corbin, all of those, which Corbin Center is named up. We do need something, you know, as far as identifying that in some way as historic sensitive area. Without, I mean, you know, the neighborhoods have changed and people just go, I don't want to be involved, but it's part of our history. And if we're going to say that Santa Ana, you know, recognize all the accomplishments of all of their citizens in the moving forward of our successful great city, then we've got to preserve that area. We do. And there's a lot at the Heritage Museum that has a lot of detail and information of the accomplishment of that area and the Black community during that time. So really, we do need to have that. Okay, we do need to have that, okay?
Yeah, any other commissioners have comments about Pedro's? Commissioner Hardy? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Sandra, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I love the presentation. I'm a big history nerd and certainly have always been mining for any historic significance throughout Santa Ana. And I grew up between, the kind of little Tiny Tim area right out there. I'm not sure what that neighborhood is called. And also Delhi. And then, of course, now I'm in Pacific Park East Side. So I'd like to add perhaps the suggestion of creating some sort of digital archive, perhaps in partnership with your history room. Los Angeles has a wonderful project called Shades of LA that's been going on for about 20 years or so, maybe 30, where they collect personal photographs from their residents and they organize that around their neighborhood associations. So this would be a wonderful way to create a repository, a digital archive that would really commemorate, our local resident history. We have a lot of it here in Santa Ana as the second most historic city in the whole county, second only to San Juan Capistrano. Moving on, there should be more partnerships with neighborhood associations. I think part of the problem with the lack of engagement with the way we structure our prizes now, you have to be a building owner, and then finance a specific type of restoration that's very inaccessible to most of our residents. Most of our residents are in single family homes and they might know their local history, but perhaps are not able at this time to finance a full, renovation, that would merit winning a preservation award. Like there's very few people in Santa Ana that would qualify, have the pockets necessary, that deep enough to finance something like that. So really involving the neighborhood associations. Certainly a digital archive, would be a good accessible way. The city of El Monte also has a wonderful neighborhood involved program for their El Monte. I think it's a neighborhood archive that they have at their old veterans building. You might want to look at that community and how they've structured that. Next is we really need some kind of a website to house, some kind of a portal that connects anyone coming to our city page to the Historical Preservation Association, the different Orange County groups. Perhaps they could even link up to the Heritage Museum and maybe have highlights on the historical significance of the different parts of our city. It could be very clearly, very cheaply presented on a dedicated, some dedicated web pages that are attached to our santa-ana.org page, main page. Moving on, another suggestion is we need some kind of the use of plaques, monuments, and QR codes so that folks can kind of explore their own community. Kids can explore their own community. I'm constantly getting requests from community members and youth groups for maps of significant mural locations, public art locations, significant points of history. And that's a lot of work for one person. It really should be some kind of a system that we can all input in. That way, over the course of time, any child, any resident, any prospective investor in Santa Ana, or somebody who's looking to buy property here can look and see where they fit into the larger Santa Ana narrative, historical narrative, and really become invested in our community at a historical level and helping to preserve and celebrate that history that we have here. Next is presenting our local history as a narrative at our local parks. I think a lot of our local parks are located in very historically significant communities. And whenever we do celebrate and touch upon that history in our local parks, it's just a win-win. The residents love it. The kids become inspired. I'm citing specifically the park we recently had at Pacific Park, East Side. We put in that little train, and even though it was a generic train and it was a generic jungle gym, it really sparked the imagination of the entire community to start to think about what used to be here and what made that, our neighborhood special, what united us. And it was that Pacific Park Railway. And, it's now a bike path, but it's something that really gave us a sense of historical place. It really rooted us into the larger Santa Ana narrative. And now we have a great opportunity to do something similar with the new park on Myrtle and Rate, because that is the site of the historic El Refugio Hacienda, which was once the epicenter of all of Southern California culture. That was prior to America, occupying or taking possession of Santa Ana. All of California was divided up into ranchos. Remember the rancho period? And all of the Southern California ranchos, all the way from Santa Barbara to San Diego to San Bernardino, all around the coast, they would all convene in central Santa Ana at the hacienda called El Refugio. It's on the Historic Preservation website. There's wonderful write-ups on it. It's very well documented. And that parcel is within the main area where that hacienda stood. That hacienda was such a significant hacienda. It was owned by the Ywca family, and then they sold it to the Sepulveda family. Yes, the Los Angeles Sepulveda family. The Sepulvedas actually lived here in Santa Ana, in that region, right there on Rate and Myrtle. It's something so exciting and so significant for this community that's been long suffering and blighted and really neglected. And doesn't even the kids that grew up there, which I know many, had no idea that they had any tie to any kind of glory whatsoever. They thought, oh, wasn't it just all mustard fields and scrub bush? No, there was an ornate 2 or 3 story hacienda that was even marveled at by Pio Pico, who built that wonderful Italianate hotel in downtown Los Angeles. He came down there. So there's a lot of history. It could be commemorated in that park. Would be great to have something like a bronze statue of Ywca shaking hands with Sepulveda, a mural perhaps that commemorates some depictions. We don't have any photographs of El Refugio, but we do have some wonderful, written descriptions of it. Something, there used to be a medallion that was painted by Sergio O. Cadiz, who also designed the mural that encircles City Hall that we're inside of right now. He did some beautiful California depictions of Santa Ana, California families. One of them, unfortunately, was whitewashed. One of those murals right around the corner, right on Rate. But this mural could be reproduced by his family at that park. It's so important that that new park has some kind of historical grounding. That community really, really needs it. And we have such an amazing site there. It's important that we start to incorporate these historic aspects into our public parks. And those are my suggestions. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other commissioner comments? Yes, Commissioner Hardy.
The presentation you just did, Pedro, and Min, that was great. I don't know what to pick from. Can we take the whole thing to council? So this is what we're working on. This is what we've been farming, growing all this time, and here's where we're at. And this is what we want to do, and we're moving forward in a lot of these directions.
Well, we're not going to prioritize them tonight. We're not doing that tonight. But
right.
but staff has promised that they're going to cobble this together in a bit more detail. Obviously, there's an awful lot of touchstones here to address. I do want to
finish on my comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Just last week, Bowers Museum, they do different talks. They've been doing virtual ones since COVID, and they just did one on Little Texas. And I've been fearful that we are going to lose some of these structures before we even know it. And then with that, the history also. So then after hearing the talk, or maybe during the talk, there were some maps. And somehow at some point, I believe the north part of Hettinger Park over, that was the overflow of Little Texas. And then that kind of brings us to what we were discovering on South Main that I've actually heard for years. But there are nightclubs there with these like famous, fabulous jazz and blues musicians. And that's all I know. But I just have been afraid that we're going to lose that history and those structures. I don't even know what they all are, but I know they're around. Let's see. And as far as the Historic Preservation Awards, I think part of the problem is that nobody really knows the parameters. There's parameters, and I wish staff could give us a presentation each year about where to look for these qualifying structures, qualifying the different qualifications, and where we can look and what can actually fit into the parameters of what can actually be nominated. That's part of the problem right there. It needs to be narrowed down. So then we, everybody knows, oh, this is where to look. These are the kind of things that can be nominated. What do we have? I don't know if we can discuss that as a commission, or if that's something we have to go, the community, we have to depend on the community. I mean, it's just kind of like how, when, what, why, where, nobody really knows. It's like a mystery. And I think that's part of the problem. So we need like a presentation, I see, yearly before the nomination process opens up. It could be very brief. Maybe just how to fill out the application. The local district process, Hettinger Park is like stuck. I mean, we should have been in a local district. Oh, some people say that our special district zoning is as good or better, or I don't know. But there are neighborhoods wanting to be, and areas, begging to be a local district. So we do need to define that process and make that available soon, because, we're all getting older. And I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about those buildings. Hettinger Park is like, I'd say a third is at least 100 years old or 95 years old. And Wilshire Square is celebrating their 100th anniversary. Well, we should have done that in Hettinger Park, last year, or the year before. So all of our historic assets are getting older, and so that makes them more endangered. So we need to step up these processes. Let me see what else is on my list. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Sandra. Now, Sandra, dear, remember, we want to get out of here for dinner at some point, but we love your comments. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make this specific to the historic preservation, incentives to submit. If it is a historical preservation, you're looking to have like these big projects financed, you want to go to the people that can actually do it. There needs to be some kind of a framework or mechanism to reach out to the developer community, because I think that there should be something like every time someone is proposing a project in Santa Ana, part of their packet should be, hey, we have this historic preservation award. And besides just a little certificate, it really should come with something that it really incentivizes it. For example, in San Diego, they have something called Onions and Orchids, where they recognize, excellent, I think, excellent I think it's some kind of restoration award, because I know that Chicano Park won the orchid, and then they have like the worst ones. It's called Onions and Orchids, but it's a really glamorous little kind of soiree with, cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, and all of the developers are there. They all come because they all want to network with each other. They all want to network with staff and the electeds. And so it's a really big incentive to not be an onion and to be an orchid. And this really has sparked the engagement of the developer community in creating structures that are historical and quality adaptations of projects. So something like that, we need an Onions and Orchids here. Thank you.
Okay, a comment I have with regard to the auditing that the state, I think it's now been a year or two ago, the state mandated that we have to audit our Mills Act contracts, of which I think Min said we have some 400 and something like 700 properties on the register total. Is that right, Pedro?
That's correct. Over 700 listed and just about 400 Mills Act agreements.
So do we have to audit all 700 or 400?
400, just the Mills
400.
Act.
Okay. Well, just a suggestion, and I don't know, maybe through your planning organization or something, there's some resource in terms of what are other cities doing so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. What are the others doing? But here's a thought. When you consider that when the city goes out and cites a property owner for a code enforcement violation, and we have the expert here in the audience with us, so he can correct me if my math is wrong, but we've always been told that the compliance rate is something on the order of what, 85 or 90%? It's very high. Would it be that high? Yeah, okay. So the compliance rate's very high. I would imagine folks that are on our register, I'll bet because they're very conscientious historical folks, that we might even have a compliance level much higher than that. So I wonder if we sent them a letter, that said, we are required by state law to audit your Mills Act contract. So we'd like you to send us a narrative telling us what you've done to, in fact, prosecute that contract over the last number of years since you got your designation. So instead of hiring a bunch of staff to go out physically to 400 properties, put the onus on the property owner who's required. I mean, that they signed an agreement when they got their Mills Act contract and were put on notice that they had to maintain the property and make continual improvements in return for getting a large tax break. So ask them to send us back a narrative with some pictures and so forth. And then all we have to do is have staff go out to the 5 or 10% that don't comply, right? And we've met our requirement under state law. I just think that would be a far more efficient and less expensive and less cumbersome way to do this. And we've been dancing around this for the last, 2 years since it came down from the state, and scratching our heads wondering, well, how are we going to do this? Well, how about that? So just a thought.
Thank you.
Okay, is there, you gentlemen, or Fabiola, do you have anything else to present to us? Food for thought?
Not as part of this work program.
Fabiola, dear, you're radioactive today.
No, we don't. As far as this work program, no.
All right. We've certainly had lots of commissioner comments. Do we need to do that again, or can we call ourselves an adjournment until our next meeting? Unless there's some burning comments.
You can
from
go ahead
anybody?
and you can go ahead and close the work studies session, but there is, remember that the commissioners have some comments about the ad hoc main place.
There is an ad hoc presentation on the South Main on the agenda as well.
I'm sorry. All right. Well, at this time, I will close our work study session and we'll move to the presentation on South Main.
To planning? Sorry.
Yes, Commissioner Hardy.
As a member of the ad hoc committee, are we just reporting out? I mean, we're not sure exactly why it wasn't on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
It is. Okay.
It's under the commission comments. So we made it so that the ad hoc can report back during the commission comment period.
Okay,
So it's on the agenda.
All right. Thank you.
So
Yes, Commissioner Sarmiento.
If we present this, it's going to be more than 3 minutes. We're already running really long. And commission comments are not really structured as an arena to take questions or to have any kind of discussion. So perhaps we can, I propose that we work with staff. Our subcommittee works with staff to get our presentation to a place where it could be part of the actual regular agenda, perhaps as a work study session, perhaps with the involvement of staff. But I don't think this presentation, its place is in the public comments. I mean, some of the repercussions, this presentation are pretty large. It might offset gentrification concerns for the entire corridor, as well as bring in, some significant, economic investment, historical preservation. There's a lot of aspects to present. And I just think it would be better in a future meeting as a part of the formal agenda and not the comments.
We can do that.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. So we will not have any comments or presentation on that this evening, correct? Is that correct? Okay. all right.
Mr. Chair, if it's all right with the ad hoc committee, we could get just a brief kind of where we're at and what kind of would have been presented today, if that's okay with the ad hoc committee. That way there's at least a mention of the South Main. So staff has met with members of the ad hoc committee for the South Main to discuss the ideas of installing stanchions or some sort of wayfinding opportunities to memorialize the historic significance of the neighborhoods along South Main. So we've met a couple times with the ad hoc committee, and then tonight the intention was for them to present to the commission kind of where we're at with the research that they've done, with the kind of recommendation look of what could be installed at certain bus stops. So that's kind of what was supposed to be presented today, but certainly with working with ad hoc, we can come back and make it as part of a formal work study. So we can kind of present that information more appropriately and let the commission kind of discuss that amongst themselves.
Okay. All right. So that'll be agendized perhaps for our next meeting. At this time, is there anything else to come before our meeting? Okay. Seeing that, then I will call us in adjournment until our next commission meeting Thursday, May the 5th at 4:30 p.m. Okay. I'll call us adjourned. Thank you.